Hello, and welcome to the CorelDRAW video tour. I'm Susan Wimmer, and I'll be taking you on a step-by-step tour of CorelDRAW. Before we get started, you may want to set your VCR counter to 0 so you can use the counter index included in the package. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind you to register your copy of CorelDRAW. By doing so, you'll be eligible to receive upgrade information, free hotline support, and you'll be eligible to enter the CorelDRAW $1 Million Design Contest held every year. CorelDRAW is the most comprehensive graphics package on the market today. Inside the box, you'll find 6 different applications, fonts, clip art, even a bonus CD with thousands of extra clip art images, animated files, and more. In this video, I'll cover the 4 main applications in the CorelDRAW box: CorelDRAW, Corel Chart, Corel Photo Paint, and Corel Show. Now, we've got a lot of territory to cover, so let's get started. CorelDRAW is the centerpiece of our suite of applications. It's the most powerful vector illustration software on the market today. Yet, as you'll see in the next few minutes, it's very easy to learn and use. From the Windows Program Manager, when you're ready to launch CorelDRAW 3, simply double-click on the icon. When you first open CorelDRAW, this is the screen you'll be seeing. At the top is our program name, CorelDRAW. This bar is the menu bar, and as you can see, I can access a lot of different functions just by clicking and dragging through the different menu options. Next is our status bar, and as we get some objects down on the screen, you'll see a lot of information giving you feedback on those options. Next is our ruler, and here's our drawing page. Down at the bottom of the screen, CorelDRAW has given you an on-screen color palette for setting the colors of your objects. Here to the left are the CorelDRAW tools, and we'll spend the next few minutes reviewing each of these tools and how they work. The first 2 tools in the toolbar are for selection and editing. First, we have the Pick tool, then the Node Edit tool. Next, we have the Zoom tool. There's a flyout here, which gives you a lot of control over zoom. The next 4 tools are for drawing objects, and let's put some objects down on the screen. The first is the Freehand Drawing tool. I just click on the tool and go over and draw on the page. It's just like dragging a pencil along paper. You just drag your line and CorelDRAW will create smooth lines for you. If you would prefer to work with Bezier drawing, you just depress the tool for just a moment, a flyout will appear, and you can switch to Bezier drawing. Bezier drawing is like connect the dots. You just click, click, and click, and CorelDRAW will join the lines for you. The next tool I'll show you is for rectangles or squares. I can draw them of any size simply by dragging on the screen. And here's an important concept that you'll use throughout CorelDRAW. If you hold down the Control key while you're performing an operation, it will constrain the operation. Here I'm holding down the Control key, and as you can see, I have a perfect square. If I release the Control key, I'll get a rectangle of any shape. The same goes for the Ellipse tool or Circle tool. I can draw an ellipse of any size or shape, but if I hold down the Control key, I'm going to get a perfect circle. I'm going to use the Pick tool, and simply by selecting the object and then deleting it, I'm going to get some room on the page. Let's get some text down on the page as well. I'll select the Text tool and simply click where I'd like my headline text to appear. CorelDRAW has text right on screen, so I'll just type in the word text, and by selecting the object, resize it. I'll move this up a little bit. The last 2 tools in the CorelDRAW toolbar are for fill and outline, and we'll review these in a few minutes. But first, let's go back to the Pick tool and learn a little bit more about selecting and editing your objects. As you can see, to select an object, I merely clicked on it and a bounding box appeared. To select an object, you just click on it and a bounding box will appear. If I double-click on an object, in this case a second click, I'll enter the Rotate and Skew mode, and as you can see now I get some arrows. I can just drag those arrows and the object will rotate. If I'd rather skew, I use the Skew arrows on the side of the object. To fill an object, I select it and can simply go down to the CorelDRAW color palette and select the color that I want. It's very easy to change colors once I have the object selected. I just go to the tool palette and select the color that I want. And let's give this circle a color as well. If I have an object filled with color, I can select it anywhere in the color range and move it easily just by dragging it to the new location. With the CorelDRAW bounding box, from each corner I can proportionally resize the object. From the side, I can stretch it to any shape. Now let's look a little bit at basic object editing with the CorelDRAW Shape tool. The CorelDRAW Shape tool works differently depending on the type of object you have on the screen. For a square, for example, or a rectangle, I can just drag from the nodes, these little squares at each point, and it'll give me a rounded rectangle. For the ellipse or circle, the Shape tool performs two functions. If I drag inside, it's going to give me a pie shape. If I drag with my mouse outside the ellipse, it's going to give me an arc that's no longer filled. Let's get a pie shape back. I'm going to use the zoom tool for a minute. Just marquee select the area that I want to zoom into. Let's look at the word test here. Select it with the node tool. And as you can see, a node appears on each character. I can select an individual character by simply clicking on the node, and it gives me feedback that it's highlighted by going dark. At this point, any changes that I make will affect just this letter E. For example, I can color that individual character. I can move that individual character off the baseline. I can move characters along the baseline, and if you remember the control key, you'll know that in this case it will constrain that character along the baseline if you hold the control key while you're dragging. And I can even double click and change, in fact, the font for that character. The Shape tool, therefore, controls the individual aspects of the object, whereas the Pick tool relates to size, placement, skew, or rotation. I'll use the Zoom tool again. In this case, I'm going to zoom to the entire page. That's what this icon is for. And let's see how we're doing. Now that we have some basic objects up on the page, I can give you a little bit more detail about fill and outline. I'm going to put down one more straight line. CorelDRAW has lots of power for the artist in you, and that includes the power to control the outline of your objects. Over here in the outline flyout, you'll see a lot of different settings, including no outline, hairline, different widths. We've given you some quick settings for black and white, and right here is the CorelDRAW roll-up. Now I want to talk about roll-ups for just a minute, because this is a great way to apply a lot of different special effects to your objects. CorelDRAW roll-ups give you a lot of power at your fingertips, but it doesn't clutter up the screen. There's a little arrow up here in the upper right corner, and if you click on that arrow, as you can see, all the features go away temporarily, but they aren't gone for good, because I can just click on that arrow again and bring them right down where I can work with them. This way you don't clutter up your screen, and yet you have power at your fingertips. Let's work with this object we've created, the line, and we'll apply some different outline settings. The first area here allows me to set a different thickness, and as you can see, I'm just scrolling up to give the line a big thickness. I'll apply that down here with the Apply button. I can also use different arrows. All I have to do is click into the arrow setter, select an arrow for each end of the line, and as you can see, I can scroll down through lots of arrows that CorelDRAW includes in the package. We'll just give a simple one up here at the top. I can set whether I want a dotted or dashed line from the quick picker for these, and even set the color of the line very quickly and easily. Let's hit Apply and see how our settings look. I'm going to roll up the pen window and do the same thing with the Fill roll-up. Only this time we're going to fill some objects. Let's select our rounded rectangle here, and we'll go through the Fill roll-up step by step. The first area that we'll look at is an alternative way to set solid color. Very quick and easy. It works just like the on-screen palette at the bottom of the screen. The second section I have is for fountain fills, and this is a very easy way to set fountain fills for your objects. In this preview window right here, you can set the angle of the fountain fill just by clicking where you want the fountain fill to go. You can also drag if you want a specific angle and just want to test different settings. If you're happy with the angle, you can set the color for your fountain fill by using this quick color selecting item. For example, I'll go from a nice bright purple to a blue, and I can apply that to my object, and as you can see, it's applied very quickly. In this area as well, I can switch from a linear fountain fill to a radial fountain fill, where it flows from the outside of the object to the inside of the object. And in this case, if I click inside the window, I'm changing the center offset of the fill. And again, I can just drag that to any position I want. Let's apply that and see how it looks. The third area of the roll-up has to do with simple two-color fills. Now, I don't have a fill loaded here, so let's click on that window and select one of the many fills included in with CorelDRAW. I'll scroll down here and show you that we really do have a lot of settings. You can create your own as well. I can set a foreground color and a background color. Let's do something simple like gray. And I can apply that to the object. Now, I may want to have this fill appear very large in the object, so I might want to change the tiling settings. Right on screen, you see something has changed. I've got two little boxes that I can play with to enlarge the tile and even change the offset of the second tile just by moving this box around. Once I'm happy with how the tile will appear, I can press the Apply button and the change will take effect. So as you can see, I changed both the size and the placement of those tiles. The fourth setting I have in the Fill Roll-Up is for full color fills, and this is great for either using the CorelDRAW fills included or bringing in files from any other application. Here you can see we give you some quick settings. Let's pick a colorful one here, and we can apply that to the object simply. And again, tiling works the same way. I can just change my tiling interactively right on screen to get it to be the same size or placement. Once I'm happy with the fill and the outline of the object, I can move on to special effects in CorelDRAW. And at this point, I may want to arrange my roll-ups to keep my workspace clean. Over here to the left of the title bar of the roll-up, you'll see we have a bit of a menu. This allows you to roll up using the menus or arrange the roll-ups. If you arrange a single roll-up, it will tuck itself up neatly in the corner of the window. If you use Arrange All, it's going to arrange all of the roll-ups that you have displayed, and we'll work through this a little bit as we get more roll-ups up on the screen. The next area that I want to show you is using some simple special effects with CorelDRAW. Let's go up under the Effects menu and call up the Blend Roll-Up and the Extrude Roll-Up, which we'll use in a few minutes. And here's a great opportunity to use my Arrange All function to neaten up my screen. And at this point, too, I'm going to get a new file, so we have a clean page to work with. The first I'm going to show you is the CorelDRAW feature Blend. And what I need to do is create two simple objects. I'll just go from a rectangle to a circle. By selecting both of these objects, either by marquee selecting or dragging around them, or by clicking on one object, then shift-clicking on the other, I have two objects selected, and at that point I can apply the blend. Here in the blend dialog, you'll see that we can select whether we want steps or spacing, and the number of steps that we want, or in other words, intermediate objects between these two. Let's just tap down to about 10 steps and hit the Apply button and get a feel for what this feature can do for us. So as you can see, CorelDRAW does all the work. We create the intermediary objects between these two. I have a lot of settings that I can make here. One of my favorite is to switch to the color and go for a rainbow blend. Now, as you can see right here, I'm given a visual display that I'm flowing from the red to the blue, and I flow directly from one color to the other. If I would prefer, I can give a rainbow fill and either go clockwise or counterclockwise, and in this case, I'm taking the long way around the color wheel to give some dynamic coloring effects. This looks like this will give us a nice effect. Let's hit the Apply button and see what happens. As you can see, we've given a rainbow fill from one object to the other. If you're not happy with the shape of your blend, that's perfectly okay because CorelDRAW gives you total control over the shape. With the Pick tool, I can select one of my source objects and resize it, and it will automatically reblend. I can also use my Shape tool and actually reshape the object, and the blend will flow to that new shape. So as you can see, you can make all the standard modifications to either source object at either end of the blend, and you'll see those changes take place within the blend itself. There's a further step that I want to show you with the blend, and to do so, I'm going to draw a simple line, use my Pick tool, make sure I've selected my blend object, and then using this tool right here, I'm going to select a new path, which is this line I've drawn. By hitting the Apply button, you're going to see something very exciting happening here. We're able to attach the blend you've created along a path. This is a wonderful and very powerful feature. By selecting the path with my Shape tool, I can move it, change the shape in any way, just by working with the control handles, edit the line, and the blend will automatically reflow around that shape. I'm going to delete this blend group. I'll marquee select, make sure I get the whole area, and then just hit my delete key. And let's roll up the blend dialog. Put down another simple shape. We'll color it magenta this time. And take a look at the extrude feature. With CorelDRAW's extrude feature, you're actually able to manipulate objects in 3D space. And while that might sound a little intimidating, it actually isn't. It's very easy to do. I'm just going to hit the Edit button, and something different has happened on screen. I have a little X here that I can drag, and once I stop, the object is going to actually be created in 3D space. Here in the Extrude roll-up, we have control over 4 different aspects of your 3D object. First, the shape, and that's what we're playing with now, just by moving the vanishing point around. We can change the shape of our object. I can control the depth of the extrusion simply by tapping the numbers up or down. I can make it a perspective extrusion or not. And I can extrude it to the front. In this case, we're extruding to the back, but I could also extrude it to the front to give an exciting bevel effect. The second aspect we can control with the extrude is the actual placement of this object in 3D space. All you have to do is tap on the buttons, and CorelDRAW does the work for you. You can rotate this object any way you like in 3D space, and hit the Apply button to take a look at how it's going to appear. Very, very powerful function. And this, of course, works on any object. I'm just using a simple square here to show you how to do it. But this would work on text objects. Anything you create in CorelDRAW can be extruded. If I'm unhappy with an extrusion, I can just hit the X in the center, and that'll take me back to where I started. The third aspect of extrude has to do with setting the lighting. I can turn my light switch on to say I'm going to use lighting, and then just position the lighting anywhere I want just by clicking on one of the corners. You can see here I'm clicking and moving the X to the point for the light, and I'm given a bit of an example of what my lighting is going to look like right here in the window. Let's see how this will look. I'll just apply this to our object. So you can see I have the light coming from this upper left corner, so this side is bathed in darkness. The fourth aspect of the extrusion that I can affect has to do with whether or not I match the extrusion to the object fill. In this case, that's what I'm doing. In other words, I'm making the extrusion itself match the face object. I can use a solid fill of a different color. For example, I might want to go with the blue, and let's apply this and see how this appears. Or I can shade the object from front to back with any particular colors that I want to use. This is very powerful 3D manipulation and a lot of fun to use as well. Let me roll up the extrude dialog, and I'm going to put some text down on screen and show you something that we're very excited about. Let's see, I'll just put the word top and also the word bottom, and I'll resize these text objects proportionally by using the corners of my bounding boxes. I'm also going to draw a perfect circle, and I hope you remember that as I'm drawing an ellipse, if I just hold the Control key down, I'll get a perfect circle. I'm going to show you how to perform text on a path very quickly and easily. Using my pick tool, I'm going to select the circle, and then I'm going to hold down the Shift key and also select the word top. At this point, you see my roll-up has changed a little bit. I have a little button here that helps me position my text on the path. Here's my circle, and you can see I can put my text along the top, the right side, along the bottom, or the left side. Well, since I've typed in the word top, we'll just go with the top. This drop-down menu here allows me to designate how I want the text to appear on the path. If I want it to follow the curve of the path, I just select that option. If I want it to be vertically skewed, giving me a bit of an orbit effect, I can select that option. I can also skew it horizontally, which will flatten the letters out. Or retain a vertical alignment where my letters will remain upright even though they flow around the path. We'll just revert back to the letters flowing around the path and following the curve of the path. The second menu gives me the ability to set whether or not the text is aligned along the baseline, whether I give it a custom alignment, whether it's aligned to the ascender of the letter, or in other words, the topmost point in the text string, the descender, or the bottommost point, or whether the text is aligned in the center of the line. We'll just stick with the default alignment, where it'll default along the baseline of the text. And let's hit the Apply button and see what we're doing. As you can see, the letters flow perfectly along the line, and they are following the curve of the path as well. Next, I'm going to select the circle again. This time I'm going to hold the Shift key and select the word bottom and go through the same process. But this time I want the text aligned to the bottom of the curve, and I want to place it on the inside so that it'll be upright, and align it, let's see, we'll go with ascender. As you can see, we have the text applied. I'll just move it up here to the center of the page. The text applied to the top and the bottom. To move this group around, I merely select the path, and the text will automatically come along with it. It's linked to that object, in fact. Now, we do give you a lot of control over this text along the path. We're going to select the Shape tool in order to get some control. I'll zoom in a bit. Just select the Zoom tool, marquee select the area I'd like to see. And now let's select the word top with our Shape tool. As you can see, the nodes appear just as we've seen them before, and in fact, all the control that I had earlier is still there. I can color individual characters, for example. But perhaps what's more important is my ability to adjust the placement of this text along the path. I'm going to marquee select the individual nodes. As you can see, I've selected the individual nodes of these three characters. And now, by simply dragging from any one of those nodes, I can move the text right along the path and give it a perfect alignment. I can do this as well with the bottom text. Let's zoom back out to our page. And I'm going to delete this object. Let's arrange our Fit Text to Path roll-up. And there's one more roll-up I want to show you today, and this has to do with CorelDRAW's ability to manage your drawings across many different layers. Now, although this looks like a single page, it can actually have a lot of layers so that you can control how your drawing is created and put perhaps complex images on one layers and separate your drawing to fit your needs. We have an unlimited number of layers. To create a new layer, as you can see, I just clicked on this arrow to the right and I select New, and I get into the Layer Options dialog. We give you some default names for layers. We keep track of them and count them for you, but you can also put your own layer name just by typing into this text entry box. Your layers can be visible or non-visible, printable or non-printable, locked, in other words, the objects won't move even if you try to, and we also give you the option to have color override, where you display that layer only in a specific color. We'll take color override off for now. So I have two layers here that I'm going to draw on. I also have a guides layer and a grid layer. On my guides layer, I can pull guides across from the different CorelDRAW layer rulers, and in this case, any object that I draw will snap to those guides. Let's go to Layer 1 and draw a couple of simple objects here. And let's go to the layer I've named Mine and draw a few more objects and see how layers work. For example, I could change the order of the layers just by dragging the name up or down. So I've moved Layer 1 to the top of the list. Now I can move it back to the bottom of the list. In this case, I hope you noticed that the objects themselves changed position, moving to the front or the back. If I double-click on the layer name, I can change these options, for example, making a layer invisible, so all of my objects on Layer 1 are now invisible. They're still there, but I can't see them. This is a very helpful feature if you're going to draw a very complex drawing. It will speed the performance greatly. If you have a lot of different objects, you can spread them across a lot of different layers. This is just a first glimpse at all the power that CorelDRAW can give to you. We do have a lot of different features, but the one that perhaps might be the most important to talk about right now is CorelDRAW's online help. We do have extensive online help that's always just a click away. You can use your F1 hotkey to get to CorelDRAW help contents. The tools are there, procedures, keyboard. We have the commands, the screen, and even how to use help. So be sure to get familiar with the CorelDRAW help file and reach for it often if there's something that you don't remember how to do. That's it for our first look at CorelDRAW. We'll be moving on to our next application. Corel Chart is the application you'll want to use for great-looking charts and graphs, whether you need a simple line chart, a spectacular 3D graph, or even a pictograph. And Corel Chart gives you unparalleled control over the graphic elements of your charts. Just as we did with CorelDRAW, when you want to launch Corel Chart, double-click on the icon. When you first open Corel Chart, you'll be able to see the toolbar on the left, the text attribute bar across the top, and even the on-screen palette along the bottom. But your first step is to either create a new chart or open an existing file under the File menu. Let's create a new chart. Here in the gallery, I can select the basic chart type from the gallery listing, then select the subtype from the graph type viewer here to the right. Let's start with a simple pie chart for the purposes of this tour. And I'll just use some sample data. As you can see, our chart has appeared up on the screen in its own window. I can maximize this window by clicking on the arrow up. Up here in the upper left corner is how we get to our data manager. I just click on the button and the data manager will appear. Now, if you've worked with Excel or any other Windows spreadsheet program, you're going to feel right at home in the Corel Chart Data Manager. You can click in the different cells, and when you use our sample data, we give you cues about what you should type in the different cells. For example, here, we could edit the title, and I'll put our video tour here, and the subtitle. As you can see, I just type and enter. I can change my data just by selecting a cell and entering new numbers. Up here at the top of the Data Manager, you'll see that I've got a representation of the type of the chart that I've selected. I've also got a way to look at the different titling options that I have for that chart. I can set the titling options, in essence putting the title anywhere I want on the spreadsheet, selecting the cell and then setting it to that cell. I can show the cell, for example here, I'll show where the subtitle is, and it'll show me where the subtitle is. Or I can scan my data and it'll logically fit into the different titling options. I can also import data from this point. For example, if I have data from Excel, DBase, Harvard, or Lotus. Once I'm happy with my data, I can switch back to the chart just by pushing on the same button in the upper left corner. Now we have our chart ready to go, and we can start playing with the graphic elements of this chart. The CorelDRAW toolbar is very similar to the Corel Chart toolbar as we see here, but there are some differences that I want to explore. The Corel Chart Pick tool works the same as CorelDRAW's. I can just select the objects and go. The second tool in CorelDRAW is the Shape tool, but here in Corel Chart, the second tool is the Pop-up tool, and I want to spend a few moments discussing this very powerful tool. Corel Chart's context-sensitive pop-up tool gives you complete control at your fingertips. Learning is easy because there's no need to remember menu structures and options. Corel Chart draws all your options together for you. And exploring it is very easy and fun. You just click at the mouse button and look at your options. For example, here in my pie chart, I'm going to click on this slice and see what options I can change. For example, I might want to detach the slice. And as you can see, I have a visual reference here to help me make my decision. We also have visual menus that work in much the same way, giving you the ability to change the elements of the chart by looking at what your options, seeing them as they will appear. The pop-up tool is so powerful because the options change depending on the chart type. For example, if I wanted to switch to a bar, and let's just make a quick switch to a side-by-side bar, there are specific attributes that only relate to that type of chart. But I can find them easily just by clicking on the bar and exploring the menu options. For example, here, I'm going to widen my bars a bit using different bar spacing. The next elements of the toolbar work very much like CorelDRAW's. We have a zoom tool and a couple of drawing tools to help you annotate your graphs, a text tool to help you type text right on screen to annotate your chart. The outline tool is the same as CorelDRAW's, but we've made some differences in the fill tool, and I want to explore these with you as well. In the CorelDRAW tool palette, we give you shades of gray as some quick settings, but here in Corel Chart, we talked to people, found out that a lot of people make charts for overheads, so instead we're going to give you some convenient hatching patterns. There's also a quick picker in Corel Chart to help you set different fills, and I'll explore this for a moment. I'm going to select a bar using my pick tool and then scroll through the different options in my quick picker. I can go from solid colors to the different hatching patterns here in the pattern fill. I can select from beautiful fountain fills that we've created for you just to make creating that chart that much quicker. I can go to different patterns. As you can see, I'm just switching through the quick picker step by step, but I can also fast forward through these fills. Once I find a fill I like, just by clicking in the screen, it will stop. Let's select Grainy Plum and apply it to our bar. As you can see, this is a beautiful fill, and we provide many of these textures in with the program. I spoke a bit in the introduction about pictographs, and I want to show you how easy it is to create a pictograph with Corel Chart. Under the Chart menu, I'm going to select Show as Pictograph. I'm going to select this bar again. I'm going to select the icon for the pattern fills for pictographs, and then go out to the file directory and select these images for potential use in my pictograph. Now here we have a lot of patterns we can use. Let's scroll through them. As you can see here, an ambulance, a binder, many different options. Let's work with this blue sedan. As you can see, Corel Chart makes all the settings for me. It fits the tile into the shape. Each bar can have a different pattern. Let's, for example, select Books for this bar. Pictographs are this easy to create in Corel Chart. To close out the Quick Picker window, I just click in the upper left corner of the window. I hope that what you'll take away from this video tour are two things. One relates to the visual menus in Corel Chart, the ability to see the chart type and make your settings very easily. And the other is our pop-up tool. Using the pop-up tool alone, you'll be able to come up to speed very, very quickly with Corel Chart. Now that we've created a chart, let's move on to Corel Photo Paint. I'll just, under the File menu, select Exit.
Corel Photo Paint is the next application I'd like to show you. This is where you'll go to touch up files from your scanner or create interesting bitmapped images. In fact, the reason why we called it Corel Photo Paint is because it works equally well as a photo editing package as it does as a bitmap creator. To launch Corel Photo Paint, double-click on the icon. Let's take a minute to become familiar with the Photo Paint screen. The tool palette floats, which means you can position it anywhere on the screen. This is great when you have a particularly large image and you want to move the tools out of the way. There's a great variety in the tools we've provided, and to help you remember which tool performs which function, we have an info bar at the bottom of the screen, here to the lower left. Just pass your mouse over a tool and the info bar will tell you what that tool does. The tool palette is logically ordered, with the tools regarding placement or zoom at the top and selection, erasing options here along this row. We have some drawing and painting tools in this section, including the ability to create objects. And then down here at the bottom of the screen are the photo editing tools. We also have an on-screen palette which also floats, and when you're not using the colors in the palette, you may want to roll it sideways and condense it. Just click on the arrow to open it up or close it. Let's move the palette over here to the right. Also, some of the tools have flyouts, just as you've seen in CorelDRAW and Corel Chart. For example, here on the Fill tool, I can press to select the flyouts and see the tools for a gradient fill, a tile fill, or a flood fill, which is a solid color. Let's open up a file and take a look at Corel Photo Paint's abilities in photo retouching. Now here's an example of how a few simple steps can really improve your image. While the man in this picture had his photo taken against a white background, it looks a little stark and we might want to warm it up a little bit. I know I happen to have a cloud picture that I've scanned in, and I want to use that to fill as the background of this image. It's very easy to do. First, I go up under Options and set my tile pattern. And as I mentioned, I have a cloud image from my scanner, so I'll use that for my tile pattern. Now let's go back over to this Fill tool, select the tile fill, and then simply click on the background. It'll take just a minute for the tile to appear. As you can see, the cloud image that I had has been tiled into the background of this image. However, it's left a bit of a line here where one tile butts up against the next one, and we might want to smooth that, which is very, very easy to do. I'm just going to go over to the Photo Editing Tools section of Corel Photo Paint. Here on our smear, I'm going to select within the flyout, Freehand Smudge. Very easy to just smudge this. I may want greater control, very easy to do. If I double-click on a tool, I can select the brush size or shape. Let's set the size, make it a little bit larger, give us a little bit more control. And as you can see now, I've got even a bigger tool to work with. And I'm just smoothing that cloud shape to make the line less obvious. I'll just go around his hand, being very careful to avoid the fingers. So you get the idea here. I'm able to really smooth that cloud. I may want to take it one step further using the freehand blend and really soften that up. As you can see, you no longer can tell where the tile was set, and we have a beautiful cloud behind our image. There's one other type of control I want to show you during this video tour. A very quick way to perform effects or just improving your image, and that's using the Corel Photo Paint filters. We have a lot of filters for you to use. Some of them have to do with improving the image. Some of them are special effects. I'll show you a special effect first, for example, mosaic. With Mosaic, this is going to create a blocky or a pixelated appearance for our drawing. I'll just give it a very bold appearance and do a screen preview. Now, as you can see, this has really given quite a dramatic effect to our image. In some cases, this might be just what you're looking for, and you can apply it to just a specific area of the drawing if you'd prefer. I'll cancel this image. Let's go back up to the filters and take a look at a filter that will just improve the overall quality. A lot of times when a file comes in from a scanner, it's a little blurry, and you might want to sharpen the image. I've got our sharpening amount set up very high at 75%, so you can see this effect. And when I click OK, I want you to particularly watch the man's face, because this is where you're really going to see some sharpening in action. It'll take just a moment to do this. And again, watch the gentleman's face. As you can see, it's almost as though a layer of blur has been stripped off of the image, and I have a really crisp, sharp image at this point. Now that's a brief look into Corel Photo Paint's abilities as a photo editing package. Now let's start with a blank page and take a look at how Corel Photo Paint works as a bitmap creation package. I mentioned to you that these tools in the center have to do with bitmap creation, and we're going to use those a bit and have some fun with just setting some simple objects down on the screen. I'll open up my palette and work with a couple of different colors. We'll start with some red, and I'm using my pen tool, and as you can see, I can just draw a very simple line, very, very easy to do. We also have a spray can, and let me work with a blue for the spray can and show you that you can get a very pretty diffuse spray can effect just by dragging your mouse around the screen. As with the other tools, I hope you remember that you can double-click on the tool and change the size very easily. For example, here, I'll have my blue spray can effect be much thicker. One of my favorite tips that I can pass to you at this time, and one of my favorite features actually, is the local undo. This works kind of like whiteout on your page. The nice thing about it is it only whites out those last few steps that you took. So in this case, I can deplete my airbrush without affecting the red line that I painted earlier. This is great for those little slip-ups that you make along the way. Corel Photo Paint gives you all kinds of capabilities in bitmap creation or photo retouching. And as with every other package in the CorelDRAW box, help is just a step away. You can hit the F1 button or come up to the Help menu for beginners, commands, procedures, shortcuts, and tools. Let's move on now to Corel Show. So far, we've created images in CorelDRAW, Corel Chart, and Corel Photo Paint. When you want to pull these images together into one single presentation, you'll want to use Corel Show. Corel Show is an integrator and gives you great output, whether you're looking for slides, overheads, or exciting on-screen presentations. To open Corel Show, just double-click on the Corel Show icon. The first choice you make when you open Corel Show is to either start a new presentation or open an existing presentation. Let's start a new presentation, and we'll start with 5 slides. I can always add more or delete slides anytime. And here's our slide. I think I'll maximize the screen as well, so you can see this slide in its full size. Now up here on the toolbar, we have a couple of tools for you that I'd like to describe at this point. Over here on the left is the projector tool. When you click this tool, it'll give you a preview of what your slideshow is going to look like, and we'll use that a little bit later on. Next is the background tool, where I can create or modify my backgrounds. This next one that's depressed gives me the full slide view. I'm looking at slide 1. The next is to give me the slide sorter view, and as you can see, we have 5 slides that we've decided to create today. Let's go back to the full slide view of slide 1. Over here to the right is where we set our transition effects, and we've included quite a few for you. These are your transitions from one slide into the next. And next to the right of it is the time on screen, where we can set the time that each slide will remain on screen during the slideshow. Over to the left, we have a couple of tools for you to use. The Pick tool that you're used to seeing in Corel applications. The next tool down is the Background tool. This is where you can select from the many backgrounds that ship with Corel Show. You can also create your own libraries. You can test which background you'd like to use, preview it on the screen. As you can see, it's appearing on my page behind me. We have a lot of colorful backgrounds for you. I kind of like this one. Let's click Done and accept that selection. Now let's go back to our slide sorter for a minute so you can see that this background applies to every slide in our slideshow. Now down here at the bottom of the screen, Corel Show keeps track of the number of slides that you have in your slideshow. We have slide number 1 selected, slide number 2, slide number 3, up to our 5 slides. It's a quick way to move between your slideshow. As you can see, the selection is changing based on which slide I click at the bottom of the screen. At the bottom right of the screen, we keep track of how long your slideshow is for you, depending on how long you set for the individual slides. For example, here we just have 1 second per slide, so our time so far is only 5 seconds. Now let's go back to slide number 1 and add some elements to this slide. These 3 tools at the bottom of the toolbar have to do with inserting elements into my slide. For example, I might want to select an object from CorelDRAW and insert it into my Corel Show presentation. And this is very easy to do. I'll just drag out an area, and CorelDRAW will actually be launched. The application itself will come up where I can create any kind of graphic I like and bring it back into Corel Show. So here I am in CorelDRAW. Let's just create a simple text object. We might want that to be a little bit larger, so we'll resize it. And let's put a nice bright red on that text. When I'm happy with the graphic elements that I want to put in my slideshow, I simply go back to the File menu and select Exit and Return at the bottom of the File menu. CorelDRAW will prompt me to make sure I want to make this action. I'll say yes. And as you can see, my text now appears in Corel Show. If at any time I want to edit this object, all I have to do is double-click on it, and CorelDRAW will launch again with this object selected. Now let's go to our slide number 2, and I'll add a chart from Corel Chart. This is the Corel Chart tool, and let's just drag out an area for that chart to fill. And just as we just saw with CorelDRAW, this is going to launch Corel Chart, and we can create any chart we like and bring it back into our presentation. I'll just again use sample data for the purpose of the video and select a simple pie chart. Now here I can create any chart I like, change any of the aspects I want, and once I'm happy with the chart, select Exit and Return to Corel Show from the File menu. And now the chart I've created has been inserted into my presentation. Remember, in Corel Show I can resize the elements or position them anywhere I like. Now if I wanted to change this chart, it would be very easy. I could just double-click on it, and Corel Chart would come up again for me to edit this chart. For example, I might want to change to an entirely different type of chart. And that's perfectly okay. I'll just exit and return to Corel Show, and my chart in my presentation will be updated. Now let's go to slide number 3. And in slide number 3, I'm going to insert an animation, a very unique feature to Corel Show. I'm going to just look in my show directory for some animation files. I have a Hollywood flick here. We have many animated files included on the bonus CD included in the package, And we have a couple to get you started on the floppy version. We also support any animated file created in Autodesk Animator or 3D Studio. All you have to do is select the name of the animation and click OK, and it's going to be inserted automatically. Let's go to our slide sorter view and see how we're doing. So far we have a welcome screen, we have a chart that we want to show, and we also have an animated flick. Let's reorganize our slideshow. It's very easy. I just drag a slide to anywhere I want it to go. You see I've highlighted the area. It's going to slide between slide 1 and slide 2. And now my animation will appear between my welcome screen and my first chart. If I want to delete a slide, I can just select it and under the Edit menu, clear the slide, or I can also hit the Delete key. It's very easy to reorder slides. As you've seen, just move them to the position you want, release the mouse, and they'll take on that position. We have slide 3 selected. Let's go back to the full screen view and perhaps put another draw element. And I'll type some more text for our second slide. Let's make this text just a little bit larger. And again, we'll give it a nice bright color. Exit and return to Corel Show. And this is the way that you create your slide presentations. You just build your background, create the number of slides you want, and then bring in elements from CorelDRAW, Corel Chart, Corel Photo Paint, or any Windows application that supports Olay. Let's go back to our slide sorter because I think I have too many slides for this presentation. We'll delete one more slide. And perhaps we want to reorganize our slides here. Perhaps we want to start with our animation and then have a welcome screen, a text screen, and a chart screen. Let's preview our animation using the Preview tool. Presentations are just that easy. Once you have the presentation finished, under File, save your presentation, and you're off and running. Let's exit back out to Windows so I can point out for you that there are two other applications in the CorelDRAW box. Corel Mosaic, which is our visual file management utility, and Corel Trace, which will take files from your scanner or bitmap packages and convert them into vector illustrations for use by CorelDRAW 3.0.
We've covered a lot of ground in the last hour, and by now you're probably ready to try your hand at CorelDRAW. Where should you go from here? Well, if you haven't done so already, install CorelDRAW. Then just double-click on the icon of the application you're most interested in and have fun exploring the possibilities. Draw it, chart it, paint it, show it. You can do it all with CorelDRAW.